Good to see you. Hope all is well. And I don't want to waste your time, so I'll get right to the reading. So, in our last talk, we were discussing this point about the Madhyama Adhikari, the Kanishta Adhikari, different levels of devotees and gurus. And Srila Sridhar says the spiritual master always performs his function from the platform of an intermediate devotee. So this is not a statement to be taken lightly. It's it's Srila Sridhar is speaking as the primary representative of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur on the Earth planet, um, after participating in the Gaudiya Math for something like, or its extension, the Chaitanya Saraswati Math, for something like 70 years. So there's a vast amount of uh, personal experience, erudition, and having entered into the intimate circle of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur behind what's being said here. And of course, this is after the passing of Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, when his disciples are consulting with him to try to understand these matters. So this is not being spoken lightly. Huh? It's worth examining. The spiritual master always performs his function from the platform of an intermediate devotee, whether he comes down from the position of a first-class devotee to do the work of guru or does so as a bona fide intermediate devotee. Because the work of guru is enacted from the intermediate stage, it is the duty of the Madhyama Adhikari to initiate disciples. So this is really an amazing statement by Srila Sridhar, because you'll hear so often that the spiritual master must be a pure devotee. And then we understand, well, a pure devotee, that means Maha Bhagavat, Uttam Adhikari. No one else is qualified. And yet, we see people who are, to our mind, not on the higher plane, not on the highest plane, taking up the task of expanding the mission. So you have to think, well, is the Krishna consciousness movement, and to borrow a term from Christianity, an evangelical movement, or is it simply for internal contemplation for a few very elite, uh, highly qualified uh, people? And well, we tend to think that it is evangelical in the sense that we're told to go out and preach Krishna consciousness. So if you think of movements that are not really evangelical, what comes to mind, borrowing again from Christianity, would be the Shakers. I don't know if you're familiar with the Shakers, but it was a movement in Protestant Christianity in northern New England during the 19th century. And the Shakers, they had their peculiar beliefs, which gave them that name, which is a little bit despective, in other words, insulting, because apparently they would have paroxysms of joy and ecstasy or something like that, where they would shake. But one of their important beliefs was no sex. I'm told that if you give a lecture, you should always put the word sex in the lecture so people will suddenly begin listening. So the Shakers, they had no sex at all, ever. That was part of their belief system. So what happened to the Shakers? There aren't any. They're all gone. because they never reproduced. Or if you got into reproducing, then you would be ousted from the mission. Aha, he reproduced. He's not, pure. So, for example, they wouldn't use, I don't know if this is common to the Mennonites. I think the Shakers might have been Mennonites, but someone can correct me. There's a group of Christians who don't use buttons because the idea that something male will enter into something female is prohibited by them. So they in their clothes, they tie things together, for example. So the Shakers were extreme like that. And the last Shaker uh, died in like 1983. And he was a brother of somebody who was converted, who was a brother of someone else who got converted, like that. There was a woman in Pennsylvania for a while. She was like 101 years old. And that was it. So that was not an evangelical movement in the sense that they couldn't continue. See? So is that what we want for the Hare Krishna movement? We want it just to die out because only a super extra hyper Mahabhagavat can be allowed to speak the holy name of Krishna. Remember that during the time of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, the Chandkasi went to the house of Srivas Thakur, where Kirtan was being held, uh, and broke the mridanga, or the mridangas. And I'm told that uh, Kolar Ganj, where Srila Sri Ramakrishna made his temple, it's a reference. Kol, it means mridanga. It's a reference to the mridanga. That's close to the place where the mridanga was broken. But why was that? Normally, the Muslims left the Hindus alone. They figured, well, these people they're infidels. They're not even people of the book. They're outside our tradition. So we'll just leave them alone. We don't want to create problems. In Bengal at that time, there was a big influx of Muslims who had escaped the Delhi Sultanate uh, looking for fertile land. And Bengal is very fertile land, very green. Uh, so the Qazi personally wasn't really interested in creating a conflict with the Sankirtan movement. But what happened was the local Hindus complained. They said, what is this? We don't want this. These people are um, they're defaming the holy name. They're blaspheming. You're not supposed to utter the name of God. Why are these people doing that? And so they informed the Kasi, look, we're upset. Please stop Srivas Thakur and these so-called kirtans. But we are the kirtan movement. So it is an evangelical movement. And in spite of the fact that the Kazi broke the drum, later on he was visited by Nrsingadev and informed that he should not interfere with the Hare Krishna movement. What does Srila Prabhupada say about the Hare Krishna movement? He says, um, we have seen it practically. Even a child can take part in the chanting, or even a dog can take part in it. The chanting should be heard, however, from the lips of a pure devotee of the Lord, so that immediate effect can be achieved. As far as possible, chanting from the lips of a non-devotee should be avoided, as much as milk touched by the lips of a serpent causes poisonous effect. So this is an evangelical movement in the sense that we're told to expand the movement. We don't want to end up uh, as a footnote to history like the Shakers. So in that sense, Srila Sridhar Maharaj is telling us, he says, because the work of Guru is enacted from the intermediate stage, it is the duty of the Madhyama Adhikari to initiate disciples. Well, this is interesting, but it's also a bit problematic. Why? Well, because we see uh, sometimes someone will be seen as very sincere, and sincere to the point where they can be considered uh, as teachers, as gurus, um, and take on disciples. But sometimes, with the attention given a so-called guru and all the pomp and the circumstance that attaches to being a guru, uh, that man may become tempted uh, and gradually corrupted. And we've seen it again and again. So then we become wary, thinking uh, we don't want to trust someone uh, who could be corrupted. But, no risk, no gain. Unless you have trust, you can't go any further. So this is an odd paradox in the life of a devotee. We want to trust someone, we have faith, and yet we see, uh-oh, bad things happen. So what happens with our faith? The thing is, we live in an imperfect world. Um, the other day, I had a conversation with Pranashish, and he said, what are you afraid of? I was thinking about writing something, but I thought, well, I don't know. And we devotees, we are often, in terms of being creative, we're very repressed and practice a lot of self-censorship. So he told me, don't be cowed down. Don't be afraid. Who's going to say anything? You know. So if you don't have spiritual courage, you can't move on. So that means sometimes taking some kind of a risk and jumping into the infinite without proper insurance. Uh, Srila Sridhar told me, he said, sometimes you get on a train and this is my destination, but to get there, I have to stop here and there. But you may notice, oh, this train is not going in the proper direction. Uh, what should I do? So you can either continue going in the same direction, knowing that it's incorrect, or at some point you have to stop and get off the train and find another train that's going to your destination. I had this happen when I was in Georgia with my wife's aunt. We were visiting Savannah. Savannah's in the north, and we were staying in Danbury, which is in the south. So we drove about 3 hours north and saw Savannah. It's a very beautiful colonial village there in Georgia. And then we had to turn around and go back. But at some point, I noticed we're driving into the sun. The sun is setting, and we're driving directly into the sun. My face is getting burned. And I know from primary school, the sun is in the west when it goes down, right? And I thought, wait a minute, is this right? Half an hour later, 45 minutes later, I'm thinking we have to turn because we need to go south. An hour later, I see a sign that says Macon. I'm like, Macon? What? And finally told the driver, I said, yeah, excuse me, but I do believe we're driving into the sun, and I do believe the sun's in the west. And I think that our destination is in the south. No, 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 don't worry, we're taking the right road. Then we started getting close to Macon, and the driver too realized, oh, uh-oh, we have to turn around. So in this life, we're on our own. In the end, you sleep alone. You may be criticized for sleeping with this person or sleeping with that person, but in the end, you sleep alone, you know. So in the end, we have to make our own decisions. And these things are heartfelt, but there's a dichotomy there as well, because you think, well, everyone has a heartfelt connection with, Taylor Swift or Donald Trump or somebody like that. Is that really a heartfelt connection? Is that what we're talking about? No. And I was trying to understand, well, what about the disciplic succession? What is it that we're looking for? You know? So in the beginning, when Srila Prabhupada, we could all see, oh, all right, here's Krishna. I can, it's like an electric current. I can feel the electric current coming through Srila Prabhupada. It's electrifying. And when he left the planet, we tried to see that in our God brothers. But it was like there's some current here, but the electric current is less. It's not as strong. I'm not getting a shock. And in fact, it's such a weak current that now I don't feel anything at all. There's no light. So we went to Sridhar Maharaj and we saw, wait a minute, here it is. This is the same electric current. I, I can feel that. That's heartfelt. That's a heartfelt connection. Srila Govinda Maharaj, after the disappearance of Srila Sridhar Maharaj, here it is again. Here's the same electric current, you know? So we could see Srila Prabhupada in Sridhar Maharaj. Ultimately, you can see Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur in both of them, but expressed very differently. Um, Srila Prabhupada has this huge evangelical movement going on. Srila Sridhar Maharaj has this deep philosophical current. They're very different. Uh, I was reading a little bit of Chinese philosophy, and there's Confucius and Zhuangzi, and Confucius, he's all about rules. He's all about making sure that the society goes on. Whatever Chinese Varnashram Dharma was, he was interested in that. But then there was Zhuangzi, who invented the Tao, or who was a representative of the Tao. He said the Tao that can be spoken is not the Tao that could be known. And all these different paradoxical sayings. Uh, and I thought, okay, he's a voidist, uh, but what he's saying is very like Srila Sridhar Maharaj's Hegelian dialectic only 2,000 years ago. And so I can, so Srila Prabhupada, he's promoting a society. He's very big on that. Whereas Srila Maharaj, she's promoting your own inner development. And that was sort of that's a distinction between Confucius and Zhuangzi. One of them is interested in, how do we see water? How do we see heaven? How do you see yourself? What is the universe? Whereas Confucius is interested in rules. So there's kind of rule-based devotion or Vaidhi Bhakti and spontaneous devotion, which is Raga Bhakti. But the thing is, when you look into your guru, you should be able to see transparently the rest of the sampradaya. You should be able to see, all right, I look into my guru, I can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Madhva, Vyas, Narada Muni. They're all present there. Whereas, and this is kind of what I'm getting to, if you look into your guru and you can't see past him, if he's opaque, then that's not a good situation. You see what I mean? If I look into a devotee and I see, I can see Sri Ramaraj here. Wow. I can see Srila Prabhupada. I can see Govinda Maharaj. All right. That's what I'm looking for. But if it's opaque and the man stresses again and again, I am Guru. I am Oz, the great and powerful Oz. Don't look at the man behind the curtain. You know, then you have to wonder, uh, is this person representing himself or is he representing the Sampradaya? You know, and I thought, I think when people asked me to read this, they expected I might give an explosive critique of false and bogus gurus. And I thought about doing that, but who am I? Who am I to say, well, this one has nothing good to say? You might learn something from that person. Isaac Newton was not a Hare Krishna devotee, but he has some interesting ideas. Einstein, he was not a Hare Krishna devotee, but he was probably a pretty good teacher, not a guru. You know, we're told that guru means he's giving Krishna tattva. So that's a higher order of transcendental knowledge. But I thought, well, maybe I could make a list of all the different bogus gurus who've come and gone since, Vivekananda, Ram Krishna, uh, Madame Blavatsky. Madame Blavatsky, she's interesting. She wrote some interesting stuff. She was a big influence on W.B. Yeats. She was a great Irish poet. I visited the tombstone of W.B. Yeats when I was in Ireland with Adwai. You know, he was in with Blavatsky because he found some curious connection between ancient Irish mysticism and the perennial wisdom of universal mystics that Blavatsky kind of tried to represent. There was Gurdjieff. He's interesting. Uh, I remember we made the search for Sri Krishna. We went to the San Jose State University and shopped around for books because we were looking for an interesting layout. And we used the same layout in Sri Guru and His Grace, where you had subtitles and photos and things like that. And the best book we could find was a book called Conversations with Remarkable Men by Gurdjieff. And I don't care for him at all, but we copied a little bit of the style and graphics from that book to use in the search for Sri Krishna. I wound up reading some of it, and he was some kind of a Sufi mystic who had followers in England and later in the United States. One of his followers was a great psychologist named Uspensky, who wrote a book called In Search of the Universe. But he was a terrible womanizer, a drunk, uh, smoked a lot of cigarettes, and really talked a lot of nonsense. Uh, but he had a way of mystifying people and a little twinkle in his eye. And so he was considered to be a guru. But this is not, you know, guru. And in the West, the word guru, it's a pejorative. It means someone who's the head of a cult or someone who has some strange esoteric knowledge. So Blavatsky turned over, she created the Theosophical Society. I have I have a Bhagavad Gita translation by one of her friends, some brahmachari. It's a very good translation because you have the Anuvad, you have the word for word Sanskrit, and you can look at how she breaks down. She wasn't her translation, it's done under her auspices, but you can look at how she breaks down the Sanskrit. And if you look at that and compare it with Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita as it is, you can see that whoever edited Bhagavad Gita as it is probably looked at that and used it as a reference point. So it's kind of useful. Annie Besant, she had this society called the Theosophical Society, which is theism and philosophy together. But she decided that she didn't want to be the guru when she got older. And they looked around for the perfect guru. And they found him in a man named Jiddu Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti at that time was about 16 or 17 years old. He was a beautiful, beautiful boy or a beautiful man, depending on how you look at it. Long, flowing, dark locks, beautiful skin, aquiline nose, piercing eyes. And they just thought, he's it. And they made him the successor acharya of the Theosophical Society. This is back in like the 1920s or 30s, maybe the 1930s. And they held a big meeting where they handed over the keys to the empire and the crown of the Acharya from the Theosophical Society to Jiddu Krishnamurti. And he was to speak. Everyone was electrified. What will he say? And he stood before the conference and told thousands of spectators, I am not a guru. You don't need a guru. If you think you need a guru, you're wrong. I don't know anything. I'm resigning from my post. Thank you very much and goodbye. And everyone was stunned. How is it possible? And so he had followers for life, Krishnamurti. He didn't want to be a guru. He wasn't interested in that at all. But then finally he could see, well, I get invited to the United States. I can fly around the world. He established a little place in Ojai, California. And California is the home of all these strange nutcase gurus from the Blavatsky Society to the Vedantic Society, the Ramakrishna Mission, Krishnamurti. They're all in California. I grew up, with that. It was in my mother's milk, so to speak. I had an Irish nurse when I was a boy, and she was a member of the Vedanta Society, and she used to whisper, Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya in my young ear when I was a little nipper, a wee laddie, as we say. So Krishnamurti established a school. And it's fascinating to listen to what he doesn't have to say. Because they ask him, well, what should we teach the students? Well, the important thing is to rid them of conditioning. Oh, but isn't teaching conditioning? Well, not if you do it properly. And how would we go about that? You have to discover that. So he's very adept at providing no answers to anything, much in the same way as Zhuangzi, 2,000 years ago with his odd parables, perhaps by putting you in a kind of brain lock where nothing makes any sense at all, you can rid yourself of a certain amount of prejudice and conditioning. That was maybe his point. So, but Krishnamurti himself would tell you, I'm bogus, I'm not a guru, I don't know anything, don't follow me. And then his followers would say, see, he's deep, subscribe, send donations to the Ojai Foundation, right? And since that time, of course, there's a plethora of false gurus. I could go on and on, but the point is, Salt and sugar, they look the same. You look at salt, you look at sugar. I've made the mistake of putting salt in my cookies. I don't know if you have, right? You're baking and you go, okay, I need a spoonful of this. And there's a container with something white that's powdery. Okay. And then you find out, oh no, my cookies are salty. Now, if you like salty cookies, go for it, you know. But sugar is sweet. So we're looking for that sweet connection. We're not accepting a substitute. Sand can also look like sugar, but you'll break your teeth on it. So how to know who is a guru? That's kind of the nut of this book. That's the problem, how to know. But really, we're talking about something which is beyond knowledge. So it's a paradox. It has to do with faith. What can I say? Who am I to tell you about faith? Anyways, so this is an evangelical movement, as Srila Sri Ramash is pointing out here. He says, we should think I am fallible. I'm reading now. I'm fallible, but I'm confident that what my guru has given to me is an uncommon, vital, and nectarine thing. And he has asked me to give it to others. It does not matter. I shall take the risk. He has ordered me. I'm his servant. He will look after me. With the spirit of risk, the disciple will approach the responsibility, thinking, I may go to hell, but I must carry out the order of my commander. With this spirit, he is to approach the task, and there will be no danger if this consciousness is maintained. But if he deviates from that connection and goes self-seeking for a mundane purpose, he'll be doomed. Otherwise, no destruction can touch him. So we can say, don't take the risk. You'll be doomed. Sri Damar says, you will be doomed. But the idea is try to maintain your sincerity. And if we look at our God brothers and think, all right, well, they're taking up the cross, to use a Catholic expression, you know, they're going to they're going to try and do this. I don't know. They may be doomed, right? But we try to help them as far as we can. But when they say, okay, look, what I need from you is money. I want money, 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 money. And also don't visit any of our temples because you're out. Well, maybe not, Then we fall into the category of misfits. So I don't know about that. He says, this internal spirit should be maintained. And that is the real qualification of disciple. Yes, I'm ready to die to carry out the order of my Guru Dev. I feel this is nectar, and I must distribute it to others to save them. Avadut Marsh likes to ask people, are you ready to die for Sri Maharaj? But it's important also to be able to live for your Guru Maharaj. I was ready to die for Sri Maharaj 30 years ago. But I lived, and here I am today, and I'm still trying to live a little bit for him and show some sincerity. So we must try to be sincere. Ramanuja's secret mantra. There's another example of this spirit of risk in Ramanuja's case. There was an Alwar, a South Indian guru, who had the highest type of mantra. This was Jamunacharya. Ramanuj wanted that mantra from him. The Alwar told Ramanuj, if you don't disclose this mantra to anyone, then I shall reveal it to you. Ramanuj agreed, and with this pledge, Ramanuj approached him and received the mantra. It had already been announced to the public that Ramanuja was receiving that mantra. And so many people were standing outside waiting. They had heard that Ramanuja had accepted his condition and received a mantra from that guru. As soon as Ramanuja came out, the mob that was waiting impatiently began to ask him, "What kind of mantra has he given you? What is the mantra? Is it of the highest order that will deliver us all?" "Yes." "Then what is it?" "This is the mantra." He gave it out, and his guru chastised him. "What have you done? Don't you know what is the result?" "Yes, I know. Eternal hell. But your mantra cannot be fruitful, so they will be saved, although I may go to hell. If you take this sort of risk, your guru will bless you and you cannot be doomed. This sort of risk should be taken by the disciple and only on the basis of that spiritual inspiration. If he does so, he can never be doomed. The eye of the Lord is there. Guru is there. He cannot but be saved. They cannot leave him in danger and relish thinking, the person who is carrying out our orders is going to hell. Can they tolerate such a thing? Are our guardians living or are they dead? We must be so much selfless that we can think, I may go to hell, but I must carry out my guru's order. So through me, the work may go on. This sort of conviction in the process, in the mantra, gives us the strength to carry out the work of Acharya. If I think, this medicine is helping me, I'm in the curing process, and this medicine is helping me, then if I see a similar case, I may hand the medicine over to him. Jiva Goswami says, Jnana Shatya Vita Shatya. If I have some money and another person is suffering with no money, if I keep tight my money and he lies fasting without food, then I'll be responsible for his suffering. So if I have some knowledge, if I can help my neighbor, but don't do that, I'll be responsible. By not helping him, I commit an offense against society. Once I asked a doctor, do you know about disease perfectly? Then why do you venture to treat a patient? You have meager knowledge. You don't know his body fully. You treat him and you're wrong. The doctor submitted to me, but an answer came in my mind that if we require every doctor to perfectly know everything about disease, then the whole method of treatment will vanish. Because they're all half knowing, there's not anyone to be found in full knowledge. Should this curing process be abolished? It is not possible. So, in the case of all culture, one should help others in good faith. In good faith, with whatever knowledge we have, we must sincerely help others. In Latin, good faith is bona fide. So we often hear this expression, the bona fide spiritual master. Just means you're trying to act in good faith. In that spirit, one must take up the work of Acharya, otherwise he will be blamed. But we must be careful that whenever a guru of superior quality is there, we must help others to accept him. We must not be a trespasser. It is also mentioned in the Hari Bhakti Vilas that when a greater person is available, those of a lower type should not venture to make disciples. Suppose a farmer has a fertile land and two kinds of seed. The good seed should be planted first. If the better seed is not available, then ordinary seeds may be sown. For the sake of the harvest, the better seed should be given the first chance. If we are detached, if we are pure in heart, and if we are selfless, the better seed should always be sown first. The lower kind of seed should be withdrawn. So when a higher type of guru is available in any circle, the lower type of guru should not interfere. I'm going to stop there. I wonder if somebody would like to comment. I'm just speaking it. Sometimes I'm speaking at random, but I'm trying to stick to the point. It's like my idea about the Shakers, Srila Prabhupada, he says, well, if nobody risks themselves, then the mission will disappear. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada, he risked himself. You know, we hear a lot, no one should become a guru unless they're appointed and officially authorized by somebody. Nobody appointed Bhaktivedanta Swami. Nobody told him, get in a boat, cross the ocean. Generally speaking, you know, folks from India, they don't like leaving India to go to the West because the West was so contaminated by Kali Yuga. There's so many nasty practices going on. Uh, so even though Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur he asked his disciples, try and preach in the West, very few really went for it, like Swami Prabhupada. And when he was there, he saw, well, there's all these bogus gurus like Dr. Mishra, uh, all these yoga people, you know, preaching yoga. And he stayed at the ashram of Dr. Mishra for a while, I think in Pennsylvania or upstate New York, I don't remember. And he could see, well, this man has disciples. All right. You know, and gradually people came to him and said, will you accept us as your disciples? And he said, yes. And pretty soon he had 5,000 disciples all over the Western world, from Africa to Norway and from San Francisco to New York to Paris to London, even in Ireland. But nobody told him, no one in the Gaudiya Math told him, you become guru. You know, on the other hand, there's Srila Sri Maharaj. Bhaktivedanta Swami went to him and he said, I want to be your sannyas disciple. And Srila Sri Maharaj says, you know, I'm a backwards pushing man. Why don't you go to, oh, Bhakti Pragyan Keshava Maharaj? You know, he's very qualified. He has more of a pushing spirit. Go with him. Why? Because Srila Sri Maharaj is thinking, you know, I'm unqualified. It's not my business. I can do a little, like the patient who's been treated a lot knows a little bit. I'm a heart patient. I've seen cardiologists and cardiologists. I've seen hundreds of cardiologists. I had a team of cardiologists in Leon, Guanajuato, another team in Mexico City going over me. So, okay, I know a little bit about, you know, cholesterol medicine. I know a little bit about high blood pressure medicine, but I did not go to medical school. You know, who am I? So Srila Sri Rama, she was thinking, why should I be the one? I don't know. I don't know if it's a good idea for me to risk. I don't, not sure that you'll be able to keep your sannyas. You know, he had reservations. But so on the one hand, you have someone who's reluctant to take disciples, who's very qualified, and you have someone else. Nobody told him, all right, Bhaktivedanta Swami, go initiate, go take disciples. Nobody told him to do that. No one authorized him to do that. There was no GBC that said, go initiate. And yet he did that. And he was highly successful and honored as a great Paramahansa and Jagat Guru. But Srila Sri Maharaj, he likes to present different aspects of a problem. He's not teaching arithmetic or even geometry or trigonometry. He's teaching advanced mathematics, advanced mathematical theories. I saw a cartoon the other day where two men are arguing, and one man is arguing 2 + 2 = 4, 5 + 6 = 11. And the other man is arguing, well, the square root of x minus 2 times a plus b. And you can see, well, wait a minute. They're both talking mathematics, but the man who's promoting arithmetic is blue in the face trying to tell the advanced mathematician, you're wrong, you don't understand. So one should be careful about uh, going after superior uh, masters, you know, and one should be careful about representing oneself as a superior master. But in any case, Srila Srinivas, she likes to show you. I sometimes got the feeling that he would go into his room and 16 hours later emerge from Vaikuntha with a few interesting Chintamani gems that he had found in the Srimad Bhagavatam. He would hold up a gem to the light, and it's almost like he's telling, look, see how the light is coming through here? You you see the color there? And oh, but look at the quality and see how this was cut. And look at the different color over it. He's showing you different sides and aspects and facets of the Chintamani jewel that he pulled from Vaikuntha. And so for us, sometimes it's difficult to work out, uh, well, what is the true path here? But Krishna moves in a crooked way. So sometimes you need to zig and sometimes you need to zag. I don't know. So apparently you can look at this. There's a contradiction here in that only pure devotees should accept disciples. We should only hear from a Mahabhagavat. But then again, Srila Sridhar is saying the work of the Guru is always done from the platform of Madhyama Adhikari. So how do we reconcile that? What do you think about that, Pranashish? It's something to consider, you know. In the end, um, faith resists knowledge. They're like oil and water. You can mix them together for a while, but they will eventually, you know, separate. If you make a if you make a salad dressing with oil and vinegar, you can shake it and it will mix together for a while, but it will eventually separate out. Our Italian friend Adwai knows about making salads, right? So you can mix faith and knowledge to a certain point sometimes, but they will eventually separate out because you cannot understand uh, faith through knowledge. It's not possible. Faith is a human thing. Knowledge, even a computer can imitate. So these concepts, unfortunately, we need to invest our own personal energy into discovering uh, their inner truth. So you can walk on the path with someone and then decide, oh, wait a minute, they're not going to the right destination. But that would be it's a very painful thing to separate oneself from a teacher who you revere. It's very painful. You find, uh-oh, no, he's not going my way anymore. He went over there. So, but in school, some students fall behind, or abandon abandon the class entirely, and others will progress faster than you. Anyways, so these are some interesting ideas that Srila Sri Maharaj has given us, and Sri Guru and His grace. What saith you? Hari Priya, what's up?
Can you hear me? Um, Mahayogi, blessings. I was interested when just the very last point you made of, the information is all in a computer. Um,
Oh, I'll put
uh,
his name. The other philosopher, I'll put his name in the chat. Right.
but what I was going to say was that the thing that's missing from computer information is consciousness. And so if we're aware of, it's the consciousness of our guru we connect with rather than the information. Of course, the information too, but the consciousness that brings that to us.
Sure. But understanding what we call Siddhanta is not simply a question of information. It's a question of what the Buddhists call right vision, you know, or what we say in Sanskrit, it's called drishti. Drishti means how to see things properly. So the consciousness of the guru, I don't know what that is really. It's beyond my experience. I can't feel your pain and you can't feel my pain. So I can't really feel your consciousness, you know. You can't feel mine. But by being in association with Guru Dev, um, we develop a kind of consciousness of, as we say in California, where he's coming from or where he's at. We can see, oh, that's where he's at. I get it. Um, and that's something very subtle that it's difficult to put into words, isn't it? But I don't see, for example, you asked me about this Chinese guy, Zhuangzi, Zhuangzi. Uh, he's not about information, but he teaches by giving parables. And as you work through those parables, you see, oh, I get it. And the Puranas are like that. The little stories that Srila Sridhar Maharaj tells and his anecdotes, like the story of Aurobindo Ghosh. Here is Mr. Ghosh. What does that mean? Here is Mr. Ghosh. It's not so much information, but he's trying to teach you through storytelling a form of reflection that will help bring you closer. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yes, very much. Thank you.
So I was looking into the skies. I'm a teacher, and so I have to teach reading. And children generally don't like reading, adults also. But you can see how adults, I teach both adults and children. So you can see how adults come to be adults by looking at their children. And so what the kids like to read? They like fables, see? And so there's the fables of Aesop, for example. But all of those fables are stolen from India. The original great fables are in a book called the Hitopadesh. Uh, they're also found in the Panchatantra. Yeah, Panchatantra, I think. Yeah, Panchatantra is another book. They're the same stories. The blue jackal. Uh, the There's a story I was reading the other day. I really liked this. A traveler is passing on the road. It's like a swampy area with quicksand, And on the other side of the quicksand, there's a hungry lion. He's an old, old lion. It's very difficult for him to hunt anymore. And in his hand, he has a piece of gold. And he says, "Oh, traveler, come here." And the traveler says, "No way, are you kidding? You're a lion, you're going to eat me." And the lion says, "Oh no, you think I'm going to eat you? You don't understand. I'm old. I'm going to die. It's time for me to give charity to the passing travelers, to the pilgrims." As you know, in the Vedas, it says that charity is a great value. And the traveler says, "Oh yeah, really? Huh." So he starts walking over to where the lion is, where he's holding out the gold, and he falls into the quicksand, and the lion eats him. And the moral of the story is, don't trust an animal with uh, sharp teeth and fangs, even if he speaks sweet words. So that's an example. There's thousands of fables like that, but the best ones are in the Hitopadesh. There's also a number of fables from a book called the Jataka Tales, which is not really a book, it's a collection of stories from the Buddhists. And they're the same stories, only altered a little bit through time and storytellers by the Buddhists. And there's thousands of Jataka tales. But I got a little tired of that. And I was looking for, traditional fables that I could use to teach reading. And I came upon Nasruddin, who was a Muslim mullah. And he's got all these funny stories that the Muslims tell, but they're kind of more like jokes. And then I came across this guy, Chuang-Tzu, and he's interesting because his anecdotes are built to make you reflect. So it's not exactly information that we find in the so-called fables or the stories or the mythology of the Puranas. But what the guru is giving there is a way to help you reflect and see in your life how to progress towards Krishna and Krishna consciousness. So it's very superficial to take these things at face value. Anyways, I'm sorry. I feel like I have time to cover, and I just talk and talk, but it's a disease. Chuang-Tzu, he had this story about the useless tree, and I like this story. Actually, I made somebody gave me a book and told me you can draw in this book, so I'm making little drawings. I don't know if I'm going to use this for anything. There's my drawing of the ancient Chinese teacher Chuang-Tzu. Of course, he was a voidist. He says, the what's the important thing about the pot is the emptiness inside, because it's useful only because you can fill it. So he had this story about, he wrote this story about the useless tree. And the story goes that there's a carpenter and his helper are walking along, and they find this ugly tree. It's just really disgusting. It smells bad. The wood is kind of rotten. And the carpenter's helper says, "Wow, that's a big tree." But the master tells him, "No, it's useless. If you make a house with that, the house will fall down. You make a guitar, it won't sound. If you make a ship, it'll sink. You know, if you make a coffin, it'll rot. It's no good for anything." So the carpenter and his helper, they uh, they walk along the road. They're going to rest. And that night, the carpenter's helper has a dream, and he dreams about the useless tree. And the tree says, "Well, why do you say I'm useless? You know, you're useless. What are you comparing me to? You're comparing me to a cherry tree?" what happens with that tree? It gets chopped down. Why is it chopped down? Because it's useful. All these trees that you love so much, the elm, the oak, and these noble trees, they get chopped down and cut into pieces and made into chairs. Not me. Why? Because I'm useless. And so Chuang-Tzu, he tells us, you must understand the usefulness of being useless. And, insofar as Srila Srinath Maharaj used to tell everyone, well, I'm a backwards pushing man. I don't like to work hard. I'm officially on vacation now. So I'm thinking, well, what is the use of being on a vacation? I have to learn how to be useless. I have to learn how to do nothing. And out of that void will come creativity. So I kind of like this guy because he talks in opposites like that. He's a little bit Hegelian, but Chinese. Anyways. So the point was, is the guru is not teaching us, algorithms or theorems or even practices like, Srila Prabhupada would say, well, don't clip your nails inside your house because it will attract thieves. So, okay, I have to remember that, Just all these little practices that I think today's Ekadashi, isn't it? Yeah. It comes to Mexico at a different hour, all right, so practice Ekadashi. We have all these different practices that we do, but the practice itself is not bhakti. See, if I ask somebody, what is love? It's, oh, I don't know. You do something for somebody. Like what? Bring them flowers. Okay. So you bring flowers to Krishna. That's one of the 64 devotional practices. In the morning, the ladies like making flower garlands in the temple. But making a flower garland and bhakti are not the same thing. See? Women know sometimes a man will do terrible things and then bring you flowers. And then you're like, I don't want your flowers. Get away. I'm going to put those flowers in the blender. I'm going to chop them up and make a soup for you. Because the practice is not exactly the same as the thing, you know? So the practice may help us. The idea is develop love by doing, you can try doing that. That will help you love more. But what is love? It's an elusive, difficult thing to love God, isn't it? I don't. All right, everybody, I've gone over my time and I don't want to bore everybody to tears. We welcome Jadu Gopal Das. And where are you, Jadu Gopal Das?
Dandavad Mahayogi. Yeah, I'm in Limerick City.
Say again?
Limerick City in Ireland.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Limerick. Okay. Right, Limerick City. All right. There once was a man from Limerick. You can provide the rest.
Yeah.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'm very happy to see all of you. Pranashish is looking splendid in his multicolored outfit, like King David of the was it Joseph? Joseph of the multicolored coat. Yeah. And Adrai with the northern light peering through the window. As always, we thank Suvasini Meenakshi Sundaram for giving us the opportunity to discuss the teachings of His Divine Grace Bhakti Rakshak Sridhar Goswami Maharaj, Hare Krishna, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Jai, and
Yeah.
audio.
Thank you for a very interesting talk. Thank you very much.
Hare
Bye then.
Thank you.
And